Good afternoon, dear ladies and gentlemen. The Ukraine Crisis Media Center continues its work, and we welcome everyone who watches here and online. We are going to start press conference, multiple citizenship, opportunities for Ukrainians of any ethnicity, and in all parts of the world. And Dunda is given the floor. Our moderator. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to all guests and participants. We start our conference on multiple citizenship. We have People's Deputy. Also, we have Volodymyr, Maria Mezentseva, and she deals with these issues. And also, we have heads of ethnic communities of Ukraine. I will present them. Mykola Alexandrovich Haber, and he is the head of the Association of Bulgarians of the world, and also Tatiana Vatan, also head of a member of Bulgar Association, and also Azerbaijan community representative Guliyev, Jamil, Ashot Avanesyan, representative of Armenian Council, and also Anatoly Semyonovich Fetesko, head of Moldovan community of Ukraine, and we will have also the founder of Global Ukraine. This is a diaspora organization. Violeta Mascalu. She's now in Mali, I believe. So we are going to speak about multiple citizenship. Half a year ago, draft law was registered on the dual citizenship. It should normalize the citizenship, existing citizenship, and we have millions of people like this, citizens of Russian Federation, Canada, Argentina, and other countries. And these issues are not properly normalized now, and we believe that each Ukrainian, despite of the ethnicity, has the right to get dual citizenship. This is an additional instrument, I believe, for these people, and they will be our ambassadors in the world. They have the right to elect and to be elected. They should inform the society they have this dual citizenship in order that voters be conscious in electing for them. And also, this is the issue of security and the issue of citizenship of the country aggressor. We have many people who have this Russian citizenship, and we should work with this issue. They are Ukrainian citizens. And in this case, they should not be under pressure, but their voting rights should be temporarily suspended. And they have the right, they will have all other rights that all Ukrainians have. For half a year, we were working on this issue. We hold round tables, and I believe that we have some good results, but still we have many concerns from different groups of people. There are some concerns about, for example, Armenian community, Hungarian community, that we should provide the opportunity to get citizenship of other countries, for example, Norway, France, and others will be excluded. But I believe that all Ukrainians of different ethnicity, first of all, they are Ukrainians. We were born in Ukraine, we work here, and we defend our country. We have different religions, we have different ethnic origin, but we are all Ukrainians. And we hold this event in order to hear the opinion of Ukrainians of different ethnical background. If you don't mind, I would like to give the floor, in accordance with the list, to Ashot Avanesyan. Cannot hear him. The mic is on. Thank you. I would like to say that our So we represent our community, our Armenian community, National Congress of Armenians in Ukraine, and we, Havitovich, also represent the Tatar community, Garichenko Petro Dmitrievich, president of all Ukrainian Union of NGOs, Congress of Ukraine, Petr Sergei Valerievich, vice president of Ukraine and Bulgaria Union, and Korean Association, representative of this community, head of Kiev Association of Koreans, Azerbaijanis, president of the Association of Culture, and Mykola Guliyev, president of Georgian and Ukrainian Santa, Moshkin Igor Germanovich, co-head of Belarusian Union, and the Prochenko Pichoti Alexandra Ivana, head of the Federation of Jewish Communities of Ukraine, Polichak Irina Volodymyrna, head of the union, Rasulov Maral Rasadinovich, head of all Ukrainian Union of Ossetin Tkach, Dan Stihanovich Anton Maslovich, head of Polish Association. So these our representatives, 10 heads of cultural communities and unions. We have a lot of representatives, but we do not have all of representatives of all the cultural communities that represent different ethnicities in Ukraine. Today we have an important day. It is very important because together with the initiator, Deputy of Ukraine, Oleg Dunda, we together create our Ukrainian history. Before, we didn't have such initiatives concerning this important draft law discussion, and today we have this opportunity. And jointly we will do what we need to do for our ethnic communities, and it will be even better to have this multiple citizenship. We, ethnic communities, we support this. We supported this initiative. We had a meeting concerning this issue. And there are other issues concerning ethnic communities. Not everyone provides consent. I cannot say that everyone wants it, but I believe that among ethnic communities, I believe that this notion, multiple citizenship, I believe that this will be good for us. For heads, for members of the national associations and communities, we believe that we should open our doors. This will be better investment and we believe that there will be new employment. We know that many ethnic communities, they have 2 or 3 passports of different citizenship. And we always say, we are Ukrainians, but we have different ethnical backgrounds. And if we have opportunity to adopt this draft law, and this will become law, this will be better for all of us. And in airports, no one will present 2 passports. You will show 1 passport. because many citizens of Ukraine, I believe, I have this information. Many citizens of Ukraine, they have several passports. Adoption of this law, this is important, and I would like to thank deputies and the initiative group. This legislative initiative is initiated by deputies, and we will always help them as representatives of ethnic communities, and this law is really important for us. It is really important. I believe that 226 votes will be to support this draft law, to adopt it, and then we will cooperate further. We have a lot of issues to deal with ahead of us, and also we spoke about political nation, about Ukrainians. In order to make our future great, maybe we should be Ukrainians, but we should say that we are, for example, of Armenian or Hungarian background. If we say that we are all different, of different ethnicity, a question may arise. We have Ukraine as a country, and for example, we have Ukrainians in Ukraine, Americans in America. They say, for example, I am American, I live here. If we love this country, if Armenians, they live for thousands of years in Ukraine, my parents were buried here in Ukraine, my children were born here. The question is, who am I? I am Ukrainian, maybe. And I have ethnic background. This is Armenian background. Maybe someone is not interested in this. Maybe someone will get it wrong. I do not know, maybe. Maybe our friends. I don't know how Armenians, Hungarians, how they are going to perceive this, and many other ethnic communities, but I believe that we should identify this. We should define this. We are multinational Ukraine, dear friends. And this is absurd. We had a very big country, the Soviet Union. Think about it. Think about what I say, multinational country, this huge Soviet Union, and then we say that we have multinational Ukraine. Federative Republic, autonomy, what do we have? If we say, for example, let's take, for example, Polish, they say we Ukrainians, but we have different background. We are of Polish background. We have our culture, traditions, and our language. No one prohibits all this, absolutely. And to be Ukrainian in Ukraine and to make a great future for our children, this is our obligation, our responsibility. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shada Dikovic. Thank you for your speech. Now I'm pleased to give the floor to Maria Mezentseva, who is with us on Skype for connection. Good afternoon, dear friends. I will try to be very brief, despite the fact that I am not the author of this draft about dual citizenship, which has been the issue in Ukraine for more than 30 years and becomes more and more issue for the executive bodies, for the presidential bodies, and nevertheless it is not least important for the international community. The law about dual citizenship was started as an issue for addressing in 2019. And now I'm very grateful to Oleg, who had brought together all the speakers who understand the importance of this issue and the need to address it. As for the number of votes in the session room, 226, which is needed, I am sure we will manage to convince and to have this, to get this number. I believe that Oleg and other co-authors promote the basic provisions of this law, which are as follows: a recognition that the majority of Ukrainians now have the passports of other states, and we should not discriminate them. They should have the right to be elected and to elect and be elected to the representative bodies. Then they, of course, we should introduce such a thing as the aggressor country, and those our co-citizens who have Russian passports, they won't be able to be elected. But I believe that this gap in the legislation, when people could not be elected if they have dual citizenship on the one hand. On the other hand, many people have dual passports, or better to say two passports. And for the civil servants, I have huge respect to them, but civil servants could be substituted or enhanced on the account of the patriots, that is, those citizens who have two passports or dual citizenship. You may recollect a lot of jokes on TV about dual citizenship, trial citizenship, etc. While we have to revive justice in Ukrainian society, and the course, political course, which was taken by our team even before we got access to the activities of the Verkhovna Rada. That is the promise that we will bring all Ukrainians to the ruling of the state should be implemented, and thus we will allow those those citizens who are currently getting passports in the Russian of the Russian Federation in the occupied territories, we would allow them to declare there's a dual citizenship legally. I expect to have a huge counteraction to this law in the first reading, but nevertheless, I observed that there is also big support to this draft law in the presidential administration, in the executive bodies. Thank you, Maria. I agree with you that there's obligation of the ruling party, which it took upon itself back in 2019, would allow many Ukrainian many people in Ukraine to get official citizenship and to get access to more resources. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Gaber. I would like to welcome everybody. Mr. Gaba is a member of the Bulgarian Association of the World and president of the Union of Bulgars in Ukraine. We support this novelty. Each state has the right how to communicate with their citizens, how to require from them fulfillment of their responsibilities and how to grant them their rights. Ukraine now is in a very complicated situation. We are neither the United States nor Dubai, and because in the United Arab Emirates, you are unable to become a citizen of the Arabic Emirates unless you were born in the Emirates. In the United States, this is the opposite situation. You can become the citizen of the United States, and this is open for many people. I met people in the United States who have this citizenship, and although they are convinced they are of Ukrainian or Chinese ethnicity, but nevertheless they're big patriots of the United States, and we cannot say that we should take either of these extreme approaches. We have to take well-balanced decisions. Today in Ukraine, we have 136 ethnicities. I'm representing Bulgars, and they are fifth ethnicity in terms of their numbers, and I don't think that it matters how numerous the ethnicity is in the country. It nevertheless had the right to be represented. Of course, I'm happy that there should be unique citizenship with severe punishment for the violation of this provision, but the reality in life conflicts with it. There are many people who are businessmen, who are ministers, who are deputy ministers. Unfortunately, there's people, they do not have, they have dual passports, while ordinary citizens in Ukraine, they do not have dual passports. They are limited in this opportunity. That's why I welcome this legislative initiative. This will bring equality to people. So I encourage members of parliament to find the golden mean that would allow us to diminish the threats and to increase the advantages from everyday life to people. The threats are huge, and on the other hand, the economic considerations also are powerful. So the MPs should very carefully consider the threats and what can be disadvantages, and how to normalize the legalization of this second citizenship. On the other hand, I would encourage the authors of the draft law to introduce very severe punishment for unlawful gaining of citizenship, or for the violation of the future law. And today, as of today, we have no punishment, neither for dual citizenship or for unlawful gaining of citizenship. Why? Because this is simply not observed by the law enforcement agencies, and so the responsibility for the breach of the law should be clearly stated in the legislation. And one more thing. Today we mentioned the aggressor country and our enemy today, the Russian Federation, and we have many people in Ukraine who had Russian passports and who had Russian passports long before the Russia became aggressor in terms of Ukraine, and we will today observe the aggressive policy on our western borders, and from the Romanian or Hungarian point of view, this is fair policy, while Ukraine has to think about its own well-being and about the well-being of its citizens. Let's assume that tomorrow either Romania or Hungary will become our opposite country, the country which opposes Ukraine in some aspects, and what we would do that. And the second aspect of this is about land. When they would change citizenship, this land will be transferred to them free of charge or not. I believe that when you change your citizenship, you should get rid of this free piece of land which is given to you. Whether this would stop those Ukrainians who are Ukrainians in Canada or in the United States, I do not think that this would stop them. They would come here. And I do not know, I do not believe that people would very rapidly migrate from Ukraine in case of dual citizenship. And the same is true about election or the opportunity of being elected. I do not think that we should follow the political course that we prohibit to vote to those people who have passports of other countries. I think that we should prohibit the ministers to take their positions if they have dual citizenship. And this is an example with the former one of the former ministers of healthcare, Ms. Solana Soprun, who promised to get rid of her Canadian citizenship but never did that, although she, in her ministerial term, she had ruined the healthcare system. And the same is now we should not allow the top officials to have dual citizenship. I do not think that I am absolutely right in all the aspects which I have just mentioned, but nevertheless, I believe that this should be thoroughly discussed and considered in all the possible consequences. And the last but not least, that Ukrainian citizens with different ethnic origin should be granted the right and given the possibility to preserve their ethnicity. We have a lot of ethnic Russians, the citizens of Ukraine, and who are ready to give their lives for Ukraine. And one more thing, that not only A and B groups of CEOs or top officials should be deprived from their positions in case of dual citizenship, but also the members of parliament also should be prevented from this. In the law, we have a clear limitation. Unless you reside in Ukraine for the last 5 or like it was in the past 10 years, you cannot be elected to the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine. This opens a lot of opportunities for people who, if they wish to be elected to the parliament, should first get rid of the dual citizenship, then have 5 years of Ukrainian citizenship at least, and then become the top official in civil service. The idea that ethnic Ukrainians should be ambassadors of Ukraine everywhere in the world, unfortunately does not work anywhere. They either are fully assimilated, except perhaps somewhere in Canada or in the United States, or alternatively they become the agents of the enemies. So Ukrainians should first take Ukraine first, and in this case everything will be good in Ukraine. We will get more investments and we will protect all ethnic groups. Ukraine should be comfortable for all the ethnic groups and ethnicities. Why that is my idea is that you should be happy as a Ukrainian national first and then celebrate your ethnicity as a Bulgarian, Hungarian, or I do not know. 30 years, this issue had not been tackled and addressed, and this is not good because when you try to address the issue, you raise it, you discuss it from different aspects, and you try to find solution in spite of putting it under the carpet.
With the National Council of Ukraine, we started this process, so we discuss how to improve all this and to involve them more in the Ukrainian community and even to include them as one of the best. So you spoke about Suprun and other officials. We have such impression that dual citizens issues are not properly regulated. That's why sometimes someone get this right to get this dual citizenship and others cannot, and there is discrimination in this issue. So a person may live for 5 years in Ukraine and no one will cancel this right. You should live in this community. You should understand people here. Then you will be able to represent your community. And if you didn't have any relation to the country and then you will go to the Verkhovna Rada, this is not correct. You cannot represent people properly. I believe that this dual citizenship after 5 years, it's okay, and you will get the right to be elected after this. I believe that's correct. And our people as ambassadors in other countries, maybe Violeta will tell us more about it. Thank you very much for your speech. And now I would like to give the floor to the representative of ethnic community of Azerbaijan. In Ukraine, Guliyev, Arif, Jamil, ogli. You are given the floor, please. Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to this event. I will speak Russian. Please, you may do this. We have no censorship here. I'm a professor and PhD in law. As I understand, the initiators of this draft law on dual citizenship in Ukraine, those who live in Ukraine, and they have some connections. And for these people, this will be valuable. This will bring will give new value, and this will show to the world that this is the right way. I would like to provide one fact about Ukrainian values. In the 1990s, first ambassador of Ukraine to US, Oleg Grigorievich told me this. He said when we were in Washington concerning Budapest Memorandum, Americans didn't want to hear us. And Shmarov, Linka, and him, we came out of negotiations at 9 in the morning. They were called from the White House and they were invited to President Clinton. And there was a suitcase and he kissed this suitcase, and we lost this treasure this value. So the country may promote its value in the world, and if we go along this way, for example, Ukrainians live in Canada, in other countries, I believe they will go back to Ukraine and will bring new value to the country. Recently, I have read the article about people and the age when they want to go from the country, and we should value the citizenship of the country. We should stop people from leaving. We should take care of it. In the world, 51 countries, they want to assess the value and decide whether this should be done. In America, they have proper citizenship of the country, and in some states they have their own laws, and this issue of multiple citizenship should be properly regulated. Ukraine has an important geopolitical place, and Azerbaijan also has an important geopolitical place, and there was aggression against our nations in 2014. Head of Council Federation, I met with Matviyenko, and I said, you have Ukrainian origin, now you are Russian, and I'm from Azerbaijan, and now I'm Ukrainian. I told her, please look at the roots, love your origin, your roots, and this is about shuttle diplomacy. Don't allow to deteriorate Ukrainian and Russian relations. And she said, we deal with it. And the daughter of our president was standing next to her. And the daughter of our president she was there and also dealt with it. And starting 2009, I'm dealing with the issues of terrorism, and I wrote my doctorate thesis about this. And there was no problem between Armenia and Azerbaijan. I studied there, I communicated with them, we lived nearby, nothing bad happened. And also about Peter the Great. He went to that region and he was ousted from there. And this 30-year conflict ended, and Azerbaijan returned all its territories, and Ukraine will unite all its people, will return all its lands, and will restore its territorial integrity and sovereignty. And Ukrainians will be united in their country, in their values, and will be a great country. I thank you for your attention, and I wish success to the authors of this draft law.
Thank you, Mr. Victor. The question. Let us ask the questions later. I would like to invite Mr. Mikhail Tkach, head of the United Jewish Community in Ukraine. I will also speak Russian because this would allow me to express my ideas more clearly. The history of joint cohabitation of the Jews and Ukrainians is more than 1,000 years old, and Ukrainian land is one of the most sacred lands in the world. For the Jewish community, the sacred land, the land is sacred. The more graves of the Jewish respected people exist in this land. In late 80s, when Gorbachev started its perestroika, they left the Soviet Union and they had to reject from their property and to go to Israel or to the US. When you go to Israel, you can get the Israel citizenship fully, and you can become a citizen of Israel. And for Israel, it doesn't matter whether you have the citizenship of the other countries. And when Ukraine had become independent, some Jews from Israel decided to come back to Ukraine, and they faced a lot of difficulties. Moreover, those Jews who left Ukraine to Israel later in the years of Ukrainian independence, they were able to preserve Ukrainian citizenship, although it was unlawful, but technically it was possible. Now, here in Ukraine, we have dozens of thousands of people who have both passports, Ukrainian and Jews. Then we have the another internal conflict here, that if you reside in the territory of the country, of any country, you have to respect the laws of this country, which means actually that those Jews who have dual citizenship in Ukraine, they breach Ukrainian legislation, which prohibits dual legislation, and at the other hand, they breach the Jewish law, which requires from them to legalize their position. Official statistics suggest that we have 100,000 of Jews, while I don't think it's a correct figure. I believe that we have at least 300,000 Ukrainians and if you take their family members, this may amount to 500,000. This only proves that the law is very much needed, and what is important about this law that it has to put an end to all possible political manipulations and all the possibilities for political manipulations. And the Jewish community is very much supporting this law, and we will continue to support it. I believe that the passage of this law would bring us closer to the civilized world. Thus, we will position Ukraine as a civilized European state. I would like to thank you and to remind you that Israel back in 2014 had become one of the foreposts of Ukrainian statehood, and not in the last turn due to the proactive position of the former Ukrainian citizens who are now Jewish citizens. And I would like to thank you, because Jewish community quite often sets a good example for Ukrainians. Now, I am pleased to give the floor to Ms. Tatiana Vatan. Vitaly, I would like to introduce, to offer the floor. We have 100,000 people who may have the right to migrate to Israel, and we had studied the former information, and now we know that during the years of independence, we have 500,000 of Ukrainians who have former Ukrainian citizens who have the citizenship of Israel. These people can come back actually to Ukraine and assist us in state construction. Up to 30%, up to 40% out of those who migrate to Israel, they come back, and the majority of them comes back within 1 year. Many of them come back within several years, and there are a lot of Ukraine. This only supports that there are a lot of people with dual citizenship. Also about students, about training in foreign country. For many Ukrainians, it is very important to it might be very beneficial for Ukrainians to get education abroad, and that we are diminish this long period of gaining education abroad. Actually, a Jewish state gives many opportunities in this aspect in terms of getting education in Israel for Ukrainian citizens with Jewish origin. Okay, I invite Ms. Tatiana Vatan, member of the World Bulgars Association. I also will speak Russian. There were many previous attempts to submit the law about dual citizenship failed, unfortunately, in the past, and we hope that this time your attempt will be successful. I understand why it takes so long time. In the citizenship, there are two things: investment citizenship or citizenship due to investments, and the granted citizenship. There were many moments in history when huge ethnic groups migrated because of economic reasons, because of oppression, etc. For example, this happened with the Bulgars who migrated to Russian Empire, or to Armenians who migrated to Balkan countries, etc. There was King Samuel of Armenian people who brought his people to Balkans when there was a threat of Muslim conquer. And I believe that those Ukrainians who ethnically belong to other peoples, they should be given this right to preserve this connection with their ethnicity. Today, it is open for those who have considerable income, while the complementary way of gaining citizenship via naturalization would allow the ethnic Bulgars, ethnic Armenians to get the citizenship, second citizenship in their ethnically native countries, so to say. I believe this will be a very positive aspect, and I hope that this law would result in very positive things. I hope that it would result in these positive things and not in negative things. In many countries, for example, in Bulgaria, gaining of Bulgarian citizenship is simplified for those Bulgars who reside all around the world, and they have a special agency which has the right of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, some features of the state security service. In course of naturalization, a person is able to get the citizenship, and you cannot get it only after 5 years of residence. You have to prove that you know the language in full scope. In sufficient scope, you should prove that you are familiar with the history of the country. You also have to pass an interview in the embassy of in your country. In Poland, there is a personal card of a Polish, and there is a personal card of the Bulgarian. these people can cross the border of this country at any moment, and they have the right to work, but only in case they pay taxes in this country. This does not allow them to vote or to be elected, but this actually gives a lot of opportunities to them. I know that Russia is the aggressor country, but in the past I spent 6 years in Siberia, and I know that there is a huge Ukrainian diaspora, and they have preserved their love to Ukraine. They were forcibly exiled to Siberia. Many of them were forcibly exiled to Siberia, and they are very eager to become Ukrainians. There is also Canadian diaspora, and I suggest to create a special agency in Ukraine and to allow this body to issue the card or a card of Ukrainian, that is start naturalization of Ukrainian ethnically Ukrainian people to Ukraine. This would allow many people with Ukrainian ethnical origin to come here, and I believe that this might be a good chance for many people, for many people with Ukrainian ethnicity all around the world. We have good universities which can offer a lot of things to such people. Thank you, Tatiana. I believe that this could be resolved, but in order to do this, you have first resolved the issue of dual citizenship. This card, which I mentioned, exists without dual citizenship. Neither in Poland nor in Bulgaria there are no dual citizenship. So we can continue these discussions. I recollect the statement made by the president, who promised to bring here a flow of the best Ukrainians who are now scattered all around the world. Thank you for your efforts.
We have two more speakers, and after this we will have Q&A session. I will give you, we will give you a mic. Now, Moldova community online, Mr. Fitescu. Please put the video on the screen. No, we do not have this. And now, Violeta Moskalu, founder of Global Ukraine, our Ukrainian girl from France. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope that you hear me well. I'm now in Africa. We have internet that is working with some interruptions. Is the sound okay? Everything is okay. Thank you very much. We thank the organizers of this round table. I believe this is a historical round table. Thank you for inviting us. The Global Ukrainian Network, we follow multiple citizenship issues for 5 years, and I am really glad that we have the opportunity to speak not about banning someone, but about bringing legislation in line with de facto what we have in 21st century. Multiple citizenship becomes the phenomenon in the modern world, and we have analysis of different organizations. And in 2017, and the National Institute of National Strategies headed by Mr. Garbulin, they carried out a survey and our figures coincided. About 10% of citizens of Ukraine as of 2017 de facto, they are bipartites. They have citizenship of neighboring countries due to living in the border region, or they live in post-Soviet states, or they live in democratic countries, US, Canada, Israel, EU countries, where today the majority of Ukrainian diaspora and migrants de facto they are in the territory of the European Union and some other democratic nations I've mentioned. Briefly about me, I'm Ukrainian who live in France, and I have a Romanian background. I was born in Chernovetsky region, the region that before Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact of 2040 belonged to historic territories of Romania, and my grandparents were born in this territory. They didn't travel, they didn't ask anything. One morning, they were woke up. Soviet soldiers appeared there, and after the Second World War, 30 brothers and sisters of four lines, they were spread around the world. They were deported to Arkhangelsk. Some of them remained in Romania, in Germany, France, and I asked why it is so, why my country was separated, and my grandmother said that they wrote letters through the Red Cross to her brother. He was wounded in the Second World War and he was treated in the south of France. He married there and he had a daughter, and she was only provided with information that he is alive, but no other information was allowed. So, yes, you may be the citizen of Ukraine despite belonging to some ethnic minority. And when I traveled to France to study 20 years ago, my native language was Romanian, and I studied French and Russian. And when I was 16, I entered university. I spoke four languages, and then I also learned two more languages. And passport of Soviet Union contained information about nationality, about ethnicity, and I always presented myself as Ukrainian, and I lived and worked abroad. I teach at Lutering University in France for 16 years, and we have Ukrainian and French projects, different partner initiatives. Before Maidan, we had bilateral relations. Now we work at global and European level. I initiated Global Ukraine NGO, and we helped a lot in order to provide ambassadors to the world, and maybe you may see that there is a lot of effort made, and experts who have higher education, they had opportunity to reach some powerful positions quickly. They integrated quickly because they know the language. And I taught in university in 4 years after arriving to France. I'm really grateful to Oleg and other colleagues, Maria Mezentseva. I know she contributed a lot in order to have progressive discussion on this topic and get rid of this cave fear. And legislative initiatives were proposed. For example, if Ukrainians do not get rid of the foreign passport in half a year, then they will be deprived of Ukrainian legislation, and this was painful for us. And despite contribution of immigrants, we were born in Ukraine, we contributed a lot, and diaspora, they also help Ukraine by experience, contact, and at the level of fighting this hybrid war. And they wanted to break our connections between this diaspora and Ukraine, and also there is an influence, economic influence of Ukrainian migrants. Billions come to Ukraine yearly due to them. And GDP is greatly influenced by migrants' contribution. And they have zero representation in the parliament. Is it fair? It's absolutely unfair. This is a ruining element concerning modernization of approaches, concerning how this policy be made in modern Ukraine. So the question about representation of migrants. So you should live for 5 years in Ukraine. Do not forget about millions of Ukrainians who live in foreign districts and they are not represented in the parliament. And I hope that Oleg will be able to consolidate this work after this draft law is approved. And our Ukrainians from abroad will be represented in the parliament. French who live in different countries, they have 11 representatives of the National Assembly and 12 in the Senate. We studied the example of the countries, we studied international experience, and we tried to create a projection for Ukraine, and we have a lot of citizens abroad. We need a faction in the parliament, 25 to 27 deputies who will represent those Ukrainians who live abroad. But we do not have this. I'm not even speaking about elections abroad. In Poland, they have more than 1 million Ukrainians. They are adults. They have the right to vote, and only 4 polling stations are open. So the state organized this process in such a way that only 5% may vote. So this is a huge field for work, and I would like to thank you for raising this banner, that you have this progressive attitude towards this issue. And someone mentioned about legalization. This is not about legalization. The law of Ukraine does not prohibit dual citizenship. I do not know whether it was stated because I joined later. And the law on citizenship of 2001 says that there is one citizenship and there cannot be the citizenship of other regions. But if Ukrainians have dual citizenship in accordance with the law and Article 2 of the law, this person may be considered only as a citizen of Ukraine. We are not traitors. We do not violate anything. So there were many discussions concerning this issue during recent years, and we should use the influence of our citizens abroad in the countries where they reside. Not all of them want to return, but you may influence policy positively. For example, in Moldova, in Romania, for example, Moldova, uh, uh, for example, there is a situation that President Iohannis in Romania was greatly supported by Romanians who live abroad. And in the countries of Europe, migrants, even without citizenship, they have the right to vote in many countries in local elections. Because if you live there, if you pay taxes there, you may vote there. And those who have citizenship, they may participate in national elections. They can be elected. No one fears this. If tomorrow, next year, I want to to be nominated for the position in the National Assembly, I will be able to do this. If you do not violate anything, you should have the same rights. As of today, 55 countries of the world allow dual citizenship. 19% may have some limitations. In Baltic nations and Latvia, Lithuania, they have multiple citizenship with EU, NATO nations, and some friendly countries, Australia and New Zealand, for example. And 26% of countries formally ban this. And these are the poorest countries in Africa region, in Asia, more authoritarian nations. So the trend is for opening. Those who followed G7, there was an initiative of Joe Biden to move towards global fiscal norms, no less than 15%, not to have these offshore areas. So we may dream about global citizenship as well, and we may create conditions that not only expats, not only diaspora wanted to return, but all others who have authoritarian regimes, for example, these people, they may come live in Ukraine to develop our economy and our state. Let's dream about it. Why not? Thank you, Violeta. You have global dreams, and we support this. And your organization is called Global Ukraine, and 2,000 or 3,000 they vote. This is not only about citizenship. This is about simplification of the process. We should work on this. And I believe that we will be able to invent something how to simplify the procedure in order to have not the faction, but our deputies who will represent these people in the parliament. Now we will have Q&A session. Please raise your hand and you will be provided with a mic. Please introduce yourself first. Good afternoon, dear friends. Sergei Petkov. I represent the Council of Bulgarians, and I deal with national minority issues in Ukraine. And we study this from the position of history and law. I won't focus on historic issues, but I would like to say that several questions appeared while listening to our speakers, and we will try to find these answers, as well as deputies will try to find these answers. I support this law on dual or even triple citizenship. I believe we should need this law. Ukraine should be open to the world to the maximum. And we should be open to the world, and we should know that there is darkness that may influence on our situation in Ukraine. I believe if we adopt a law and we have deputies, we delegated these responsibilities to them. So we need to understand that a number of collisions are going to appear. Some collisions were voiced in this hall, for example, tax issues. If a person has dual or triple citizenship, how do they pay taxes? And this issue should be included in the law. This should be in the law, in transitional provisions of the law. Next question. How this person will protect the interests of people in the parliament? For example, there is aggressor state, the issue of Nord Stream 2. And this is not a person from aggressor country. This person will come from Europe, and he will promote the issues that will not be beneficial to our country. The next question about if a person who has multiple citizenship, how this person will work in executive bodies of power. Today we heard the issue that executive bodies, they lack staff, and I worked in the Ministry of Justice and then in the Secretariat of Human Rights in the Parliament, and 70% of executive bodies of functions, 70% of functions are not appropriate to these bodies, and these people may be fired. Where will they work? They are not accustomed to work manually. And where will they work? And we should provide employment. We say that we provide employment to those who will come back from abroad. And as you know, we lack working places. That's why our citizens go study and work abroad. And Tatiana said it correctly about confirmation of Ukrainian origin. We should not confuse it with dual citizenship. A person who lives elsewhere, they say, for example, I am Ukrainian, and They should declare this now. We should not wait for adoption of this law. We should introduce this now. And to do it like this is done in Bulgaria, in Israel, in Poland, and there is free of charge training in these countries for the children who have this origin. They are not citizens, but they have the origin of this country, and they get stipends and study for free. The state helps them. And this should be stated in transitional provisions. And we should speak with the Ministry of Education, because half of higher educational institutions during independence, they were closed, and now schools in villages got closed because there is no people. People go to cities, they go abroad, and this should be stated in transitional provisions, because this brings collisions. We should create educational institutions. We should create conditions for learning for representatives of other ethnicities, people who come from other countries, and this is an important issue. In many countries, a system is created when when a child comes. For example, they want to study in Ukraine, and they are asked to provide money, and all this, and we should first deal with these issues in order to adopt this global and so needed law. What I've said, this is only a small part of the collisions that will appear in several days after adoption of this law. And I'm saying not like a theoretician, although I am PhD on this. And I have I also lived in the Crimean Autonomous Republic, and I have seen how this community, I don't know how to call them, these people who had the wish to live in other country, how they step by step took these leading positions in the bodies of the state power, in courts, in prosecutor's office, in law enforcement bodies, in the army, and then they influenced the situation that happened there. So, dear colleagues, I have a big I want to ask you to think through all aspects. This should be an efficient mechanism in order that Ukraine got open to the world, and it should be properly protected. Ukraine should be independent, and the land market should remain Ukrainian, and Ukraine should remain Ukrainian state for all Ukrainians, even for those Ukrainian Cossacks who live now in Kuban, in Zelený Klin, and in other countries and parts of the world. Thank you for your attention. Please, I would like to hear answers.
Thank you, Sergei Valerievich. You have raised many issues. I have doubts that these issues, and even those issues which you haven't mentioned today, that all those issues could be resolved within one draft law. All that issues which you mentioned might become the scope of work for the Verkhovna Rada by the end of its current term. As for the taxes, partially this is resolved now. Even those Ukrainian citizens who wish, they may leave the tax residency of Ukraine and go to the tax residency in Israel and in other countries, and this is the issue which requires careful consideration. Any further questions, please raise your hands. As far as I understand, Bayramov, Commandar, wanted to take the floor. Good afternoon. Thank you for this invitation. I'm representing the regional council in Poltava region. I've made a lot of discoveries today. As many MPs, I support this draft law. I feel myself rather comfortable in Ukraine, and I do not have any business here. I worked for the energy sector, and as one of the top managers, I belonged to the A category of civil servants. I have mixed family. My wife is Ukrainian, and I do not need any dual citizenship as of today. But listening to what you have been discussing today, I understood that this may be an important thing for many people. Listening to you, lady, I found listening to Tatiana, listening to Violetta via Skype, I understood that there are many people, I realized that there are many people who are scattered around the world, and they would like to come back to Ukraine. Why not to remove this barrier for them, which amounts to 5 years to gain Ukrainian citizenship? And having got the invitation to this discussion, I tried to find some information, and I found that that information is insufficient. I believe that we should invite the elders of Crimean Tatar people and of other ethnic groups residing in Ukraine, and invite them to communication about that, to the dialogue on this issue. I believe that this is a timely moment in our history to raise this issue. I'm not a historian, I am not a humanitarian scholar. I'm an energy worker in the past. I'm an engineer, and I recollect that in the Soviet times, that at the beginning of the creation of the Soviet Union, the national issue had become the primarily topic, and this issue has not been resolved, had not been resolved up to the very end of the Soviet Union. And nevertheless, I have hope that Ukrainians will become the citizens of the world, that never somebody would take primarily positions neither in the land issues nor in any other aspects. We have to live in line with the European laws. Why I have said that I feel comfortable in Ukraine? Because the Ukrainian state never prevented me from becoming the employee of the energy company when I relocated to Ukraine from Azerbaijan. Which year it was? It was 1990. And in 1998, I had become the member of the Luhansk City Council, and nobody opposed my application to the city council. I fully agree with all the participants of all this round table. We are Ukrainian nationals. My children do not speak Azerbaijani. It's my problem, but they speak local languages of this country. And thank you very much. Thank you for your intervention. I'm happy to give the floor Grigorichenko. We have who is the president of Roma people in Ukraine. I'm also the president of the Council of National Communities, Ethnic Communities in Ukraine. Thank you for this opportunity. I would like to say that this draft law, which deals with Ukrainian citizenship and dual citizenship, it is very topical issue. It is timely issue. It is a step to democratic transformations which we wish to implement in Ukraine. This is the draft law which is in the spirit of European values, and this is actually to step closer to those European values. The free flow of labor migrants, etc. It is also very important. This draft law would allow our state to change the approach to migration. This is one more dimension of freedom, of liberty to our citizens. This would allow those people who would like to migrate to Ukraine to come here, while those who wish to leave Ukraine and to migrate to Europe looking for employment to leave Ukraine. More than 7.5 million of Ukrainian citizens are now abroad. Whether this is good or bad, we do not know. This is both positive and negative. Ukrainians who earn money in Europe, this is around up to $16 billion. They are remitted to Ukraine. Those who come to Ukraine, those migrants who come to Ukraine, they gain Ukrainian citizenship. They can earn more money than in their native countries. These are countries like Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, India, Pakistan. This is both positive and negative, and legislators should keep this in mind and try to strengthen the quality of those people who come. There might be people who entered the country with unfriendly intentions towards Ukraine, and I agree with Mr. Petkov that we have to think carefully today how to adapt those migrants, and we should not hope that we would be able to ignore this issue. More and more people will come, and we have to adapt to them, and we need to offer education of children and education of adults, and offer them an opportunity to gain education in Ukraine, to learn Ukrainian language. European institutions devote much attention to the issues of dual citizenship, polypatriotism, dual patriotism, etc. The Council of Europe is able to offer some recommendations how to address this issue. I also would like to say that I am a representative of the Roma community. You might know that Roma community is a global community, and it is spread from Australia to Sweden, and from the United States to China, and in India. Yes, of course, and in India. This is a huge community. This is a community residing in many countries and many states, and within thousands of years of migration around the world, it always adapts to the situation. Studies, learns languages, and contributes to the culture of these people where they result. You may find the traces of Roma culture in Hungarian, Bulgarian, Spanish, and other cultures in Balkan nationalities. The Roma started to migrate in the 500 year BC, and you may borrow some experiences to set your political course. From the Council of Europe, you may take some guidelines produced by the working group in the Council of Europe, which addresses these issues. Of course, the issue is not simple, and MPs have to weigh advantages, disadvantages, and find a good balance. Thank you, Petro Dmitrovich. I agree with Mr. Tkach that when you come to a country, you get a passport, you become a Ukrainian, and you have to comply with the laws which exist on this country, which gave you shelter. Any further intervention? The Council of Ethnic Communities, the Council of Tatars. I would suggest to gain and to seek for broader civic support for this draft law. I believe that we should approach to our top officials, to NGOs, and thus we will be able to organize a broad civil society campaigning for it. Any further questions? No, no, one more question. I'm Inna Zhagderova. I'm a representative I'm from the Council of Ethnic Communities, and I'm the leader of the Ethnic Cultural Cultures Council. We welcome this draft law, and each of us has different ethnic origins. We very grateful to Ukraine that it had become a joint home for all of us, for people in culture, in arts. It's very important. A person and ethnic group can flourish when it has a lot of freedom. And I think that Ukraine will be valued even more if we will have more possibilities to flourish in ethnical aspects. This draft law, which is courageously submitted by a group of by Andrei, and I hope this is a good idea on the one hand. On the other hand, this will be the end of your quiet life. And this is the beginning of our path to the openness to a big world. That's why I would like to support this draft law. Our public broadcasting should pay more attention to this law, and that's why I would like to express the supportive attitude of all our multinational gathering, that this is one of the most important draft laws during the latest 30 years. This will be the step forward towards open society, and we won't persecute people for what has become a norm in the civilized world. Let the world get to know Ukraine. We will try to increase the public awareness about our work. I would like to give the floor to Farhad Turanagli. Thank you for this invitation, dear members of parliament. I'm representing the National Kiev Mykola, the National University, the Kiev Mykola Academy, and in the past, we used to use the term dual citizenship. Now we use the term multiple citizenship. This issue had been being discussed since the moment of Ukrainian independence, and it hasn't lost its topicality. I expect that it will become even more topical in the post-pandemic period. I had a chance to visit many countries and many events, and I met with the representatives of Ukrainian communities abroad, just like Ms. Violeta. And I can say that this is the issue which is important, not in the aspect of the influence on political influence on political decisions in the countries where people reside, but also people will feel more protected, socially. Why Ukrainians working in other countries and developing economy in other countries, but they are deprived from citizenship in those countries. For example, when pandemic had broken, many Ukrainians were deported to Ukraine. Here we have two problems. Gaining of multiple citizenship in Ukraine, as as a member of parliament mentioned. I am a Ukrainian citizen and I'm Ukrainian patriot. I do not require any multiple citizenship, but those Ukrainians who come to Ukraine from Canada, from Poland, and who relocate to Ukraine, I have Ukrainians who among my students who arrived from the US, from Italy, and they want to become the citizens of their historical motherland, so to say. Then about Ukrainian citizens from Arab countries. When they go to the Saudi Arabia kingdom, whether they would have the right to get a citizenship of the Arab Emirates Kingdom, being a citizen of Ukraine. Also, as it was mentioned today, this draft law has to protect the national interests of Ukrainian state. This should be the fundamental basis for this draft law. And thank you for your attention, Mr. Farhad. Let me answer to your question about the passports. Any Ukrainians, any Ukrainian have the possibility to get have the possibility to have passport of any other country. They have to warn that they have another citizenship. Have I answered your question? I would be happy to regulate the laws of other countries. I suggest to normalize this issue via the friendship group. For example, in Saudi Arabia Kingdom, they have the parliament, or in Poland, you may ask them to pass the similar laws about giving their passports to Ukrainian citizens who relocate to those countries. A big percentage of countries in the world provide such an opportunity about multiple citizenship. In Baltic countries, nevertheless, they take more restricted approach, although they are in Europe. But in those Baltic countries which I mentioned, they partially and gradually approach to these solutions. Perhaps you are right. The friendship groups in the parliament should lobby this issue in those countries. And also the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Yeah, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs have a lot of responsibilities. If the law requires from the ministry to do something, they would be able to do this. My experience with other countries, with the other ministries suggest that the minister should be instructed by the law. And one more statement. Today's our event will be somehow communicated to the President of Ukraine, and I suggest to present to the attention of the President that we need a single center for the foreign Ukrainians, which would coordinate the work with them. So I encourage you to apply to the President and bring to his attention that after today's discussion, we decided that Ukraine needs such a body. Yeah, I agree with you that this issue should be raised. I have heard that we need to create a ministry which would deal with the Ukrainian as living around the world. We have the service of the intergovernmental policy and the freedom, the religious freedom. This is simply an advisory body under the Ministry of Culture. We agree with you. We expected bigger results from that body. We need an executive body which will deal with this issue. This can be the state service, either the ministry, like the Ministry of Ethnic Communities and Foreign Ukrainians. Vitaly, do you agree? I suggest to reform that service because we never got a lot of the support. Violetta, very briefly, please. I wanted to say that as for foreign Ukrainians, there is a Department of Foreign Ukrainians and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The issue is about the policy of that department. During all the years after Euromaidan and the revolution of dignity, we never saw a big breakthrough in this position and in this policy. So the issue is how to look on this multiple citizenship and to take proactive position. And I would like to thank you for this work. You may count for our for our broad support. During President Poroshenko's citizenship, we stopped 3 attempts to deprive us from Ukrainian passports, and one more attempt under the current term. And we believe that this discussion would put an end to those attempts. This is a huge step forward, and I am grateful to all the representatives of the ethnic communities who expressed their support to the draft law. We are very eager to see the positive result of your work. Thank you, Violetta. This very event is a stage in the presidential office work aimed at this issue. Thank you very much for this discussion. I'm very happy that you are so much engaged, and I hope that we will reach the positive results.